The death march anti-pattern is a very common one, especially at scale. You quite often read about it in the papers where government projects, certainly large projects, lurch on for months running into years, budgets are exceeded perhaps multiple times, and eventually the project just fails. It doesn't deliver anything like the value that was initially anticipated. The death march anti-pattern is in some respects the corollary, the opposite of the controlled failure pattern. It's a clear illustration of people failing to fail early, failing to control failure. And the forces behind that, behind wanting to put off the day when a project ultimately collapses, it boils down to effectively a lack of political will, a lack of willpower. Yeah? Death march projects happen when big promises are made, but rather than deliver the value iteratively and incrementally in a controlled manner, a big release is planned. Yeah, that's one of the symptoms, or at least rather one of the indicators that a death march is on the cards. Yeah, it's planning the big release, because when you plan the big release, you're not going to have an early release of value. You're not going to be able to deliver things bit by bit by bit, which of course is the agile way of working, to deliver things incrementally. That's what you want to do to avoid having a death march. Yeah? So where you find a death march project, you're very unlikely to find anything like agile practice in place. Because if they were doing things in an agile way, either value would have been released iteratively and incrementally, and so even if a project fails, by that time there might have been in receipt of 90%, let's say, of the value of that project. Okay, so it's either going to be, value is either going to be obtained that way, or there will have been opportunities to pivot. Yeah, so with the controlled failure pattern, you can, if you are sensible, turn it into another pattern and pivot to a different value proposition. Yeah? If you ignore that opportunity, if you don't pivot, if you don't do your validated learning and use actionable metrics to see what it is that is genuinely valuable and should be valued, if you don't do that, that's another indication that you're likely to be on a death march. Now, people on those projects that are heading nowhere other than the grave, people who are on those projects know it. Yeah, they know it because it's their work. They're doing it day in, day out. They know what the score is. They know whether or not they're likely to hit targets. And it can be very, very demoralizing. It is very, very demoralizing for them to be in that kind of situation. And staff turnover tends to be very high. Yeah. You'll get technical people leaving because they know that they can't basically deliver what's being demanded of them. And you'll get the movers and shakers leaving as well, perhaps in order to protect their reputations.